Welcome back everybody to another episode of our weekly Moto News Roundup, where this time we'll look at Aprilia's phenomenal new MotoGP derived special, Norton cancelled their current lineup, Kawasaki announced new colours for their retros and cruisers, and there's a strong rumour that Honda could be bringing back the Super 4. Then there's some very interesting sales figures from India. BSA say the new BANTAM has been a massive hit. Yamaha France put out this striking special edition. Honda continue to tease their new electric Naked. Stark say how they'll beat petrol-powered road bikes. MAEVING get a big lump of investment, and we'll round off by looking at a car. But let's kick off with the spectacular new limited edition run RS V4 XGP from Aprilia, which is the 5th X model they've launched, and the general idea is to offer a slice of MotoGP performance and tech to the general public, albeit at an eye-watering price. This latest version, they say, is an aerodynamic marvel with a lot of the bodywork taken from their current MotoGP bike, and you'll see all sorts of appendages hanging off it. Still, I would say it's a rather nice looking thing, and it ought to be pretty rapid too. It makes an incredible 238 horsepower peak, and it weighs in at just 165 kilograms. Now, as you can imagine, running gear is absolutely top spec. You've got forged magnesium Marcassini wheels wrapped in Pirelli slicks, Brembo's best of the best GP4 MS calipers on 330mm T-drive discs, and Öhlins contribute the suspension with a pressurized FKR fork and a TTX piggyback shock. So a very trick machine, but one would absolutely hope so, because the price comes in at €90,000, which is about equivalent to £78,000 plus VAT on top. Just 30 of them will be made worldwide, and so if you're hoping to pick one up, then you better get saving soon. Over at Norton though, this week we got the news that they've just finished production of their existing lineup of bikes. So that's not only the V4 SV sports bike and the V4 CR Naked, which we knew would be wound up soon as they've already teased the successor to the SV, but also the current generation of 961 Commando. Now, some bikes are still being delivered, some are still in dealers unsold, but in terms of their production, well, there'll be no more rolling off the line from their factory just up the road from here in Solihull. What's next then? Well, like I say, we do know there's a new sports bike coming because we published the spy shots of it a few weeks back. That's the successor to the V4 SV. It looks a bit more like a Ducati from the front end, it's got to be said, but that one's expected at EICMA in Milan in November. And then they're also expected to launch a new lineup of 450cc bikes, which will be made by their owners TVS, using the same parallel twin as the hotly anticipated new BMW F450 GS. Thing is though, there's absolutely no word on the Commando. They're not saying that they're going to follow up on that one. And there does seem to be a move away from Norton being a purely, heritage-inspired retro brand, and more so towards competing toe-to-toe with the established modern-day competition. Still, to me though, Commando seems like too big of a model name to drop, in its own right, and the recognition that it has, it seems to be worth a lot. And so what do you think? Will they completely kill it off, bring it back as a 450, or come up with a new platform to replace the 961? Now, Kawasaki continue their color updates, which they've been drip feeding out over the past couple of months, with some fresh paint this week for the Z650RS Retro and the Vulcan and Eliminator Cruisers. The Z650RS though, is that a good looking bike or what? And I think they've really smashed it with these 3 new colors for 2026. The ebony with red accents, that looks pretty nice to me. The candy emerald green does give you a bit of that classic Kawasaki look. But my pick of the 3 has to be this metallic ocean blue with the gold accents and the gold wheels, which just looks bloody lovely to me. As for the cruisers, a little less inspiring, a fair bit more subdued. The Vulcan S, which uses the same 650 twin as the Z650RS, well, that one comes in either grey or black. And then you've also got the 500 twin-powered Eliminators, which also come in black or grey, although they have also introduced a new red version, which does look pretty good to be fair. Moving swiftly on to Honda though, we've got rumour this week that they could be working on a revival of the CB400 Super 4. Now I first saw this one in Japanese magazine Young Machine, or on their website rather, but they're usually pretty reliable when it comes to this sort of stuff, and there's also a follow-up on Cycle World with a little bit more detail. Now I hadn't quite appreciated that this particular bike, known as the CB400SF, was still on sale up until 2022 in Japan, where it's particularly popular owing to sub 400 licenses. The reason though that it's expected to make a comeback in the coming months is that they've recently trademarked names for two new sports bikes, both the CBR400R4 and the CBR500R4, and those are expected to be their response to Kawasaki's ZX4RR, along with the inline-4 powered middleweights from the big Chinese brands like CF Moto, QJ Motor and Cove. The 400 version, again, would be for the Japanese market, where that's a kind of license thing. The 500 expected to be for the rest of the world. And so a naked version wouldn't take a huge leap of the imagination, but also Honda have just filed a new trademark application in Japan for the name CB400 Super 4, so that suggests they're getting ready to use it again. I've always thought this is a really cool looking bike, especially for a kind of smaller capacity machine, and so hopefully this one does come to fruition. Speaking of mid-capacity machines though, well, this article on Rushlane really caught my attention this week with some monthly sales figures for India for the 350 to 450cc motorcycle segment. Lots of bikes you'll recognise on this list, I'm sure, that are also really popular here in the UK, like the Triumph 400s, which are some of their best-selling bikes, the Honda CB350s, which are basically the same as the GB350S, which has been selling exceptionally well here this year, and also some others like the KTM 390, the Aprilia 457s, and also the Husky 401s. But what really struck me about this is the absolute dominance of Royal Enfield. If you look at just the top four bikes, so the Classic 350, the Hunter 350, the Bullet 350 and the Meteor 350, well, if you add up the market share in the right-hand column for just those bikes, it's over 80%, which is just a bit mind-blowing. I mean, I knew they were popular in India, but that really does bring it home. Can anybody ever compete with them? Well, BSA are certainly trying their best with their new BANTAM 350, and according to MCN, they're selling like hotcakes, at least here in the UK. You see, Luke Gregory, MD at their UK distributor, Lucas Distribution, said they've already taken 600 orders since they launched them just over 4 weeks ago, which he says is unprecedented for the brand since its relatively recent rebirth. He then goes on to say that one of their dealers, Eddie's Moto in Tadcaster, said that one of their recent BSA demo days was their busiest day at the shop that they'd ever had. So clearly they've caught the eye of the British biking public, and rightly so, according to Tim, who covered the launch of the BANTAM 350, because I was being lazy on holiday. So look, I'll link to it, his review, down in the description below so you can find out exactly what he liked about it so much. Meanwhile, Yamaha France have just announced this awesome looking special edition called the MT-07 Grand Prix de France. The colour scheme is said to pay tribute to Fabio Quartararo, who sported a similar livery at his home round of the MotoGP calendar recently, at which, to be fair, he did particularly well by qualifying on pole with a lap record, although he did go on to finish 4th in the sprint and then I think crashed out as well in the early laps of the main race. On top of the fancy decals though, on this MT-07 you also get a fly screen and a tail tidy thrown into the deal. But this one, as you might have guessed, is unfortunately only available in France. Now, to be fair, maybe it is a little bit too French to appeal to other markets, but it does make you wish for something like the MT-07, which is a little bit boisterous in personality anyway, that maybe they did it for other countries, or just generally made the standard paint jobs a little more ballsy. Next up, Honda continue to tease their EV Fun, which they're expected to launch in the next few months, which will be their first recreational electric motorcycle as opposed to the ones that kind of focus on urban mobility. These latest images show it being tested out on the road in Europe, albeit still wrapped up in test camouflage, garage. And while none of the most important facts and figures have been disclosed yet, so price, range, weight, stuff like that, well, it looks to be taking shape, and so we shouldn't be too far off. What will it look like though in final production? Well, it is hard to tell from those particular shots. They've done a pretty comprehensive job with the camo there. But these design patents leaked a couple of weeks back. They came up on motorcycle.com, and they do show us the overall shape of the bike, complete with headlight and indicators and mirrors and license plate and all that stuff. So look, I ran that through Google Gemini to color it in, and it came up with this, which I think looks like a fairly reasonable approximation and quite typical of Honda in terms of the fairly subdued color choice. As always though, I'd love to know what you think of it down in the comments. Now Stark, the electric dirt bike manufacturer, recently went on record as saying that they're working on a road bike too, and not only that, but they think it'll be better than the internal combustion powered competition, and that's why they think it would be a success. I think most of us would be pretty skeptical about that, but this week their CEO was interviewed and gave a little bit more information on the sort of figures that he'd be expecting. So Cycle World interviewed Anton Vass, Stark CEO, and he said they're working on something equivalent to an 800cc internal combustion bike, as he believes that's where most of the demand in the market currently exists. Then he goes on to say that he thinks 186 miles of range would be possible, and yet with just 10 minutes of fast charging. To me, that sounds a lot more acceptable than the sort of range and charging times that we're getting at the moment, although he didn't say whether that range was city or highway or combined, which are the main ways that generally electric bike manufacturers tend to categorize range. He also said it would be about 2 years off, so I guess we've got a little wait to find out. Meanwhile, British brand MAEVING are more so focused, I'd say, on city-friendly bikes, very good-looking ones too, and it looks like you might be seeing more of them out on the road soon, especially if you live outside of the UK. You see Visordown report that they've just taken 8 million of investment from a variety of investors, and some of that will be spent on R&D and new models, but also a good chunk of it will be used to increase their marketing budget, specifically overseas. Rounding off though, we've got a couple of new prototypes here from Mini, which I thought we'd cover because they've been built in collaboration with custom bike brand Deus Ex Machina. At least that's how they started anyway, making custom motorcycles, but they later expanded into surfing and clothing and also these clubhouse type locations, of which there are many dotted around the globe now. It seems as though they're pretty close though, with BMW Group having recently put out a custom R1290. And then also this week, this pair of bespoke minis, which do look rather striking. I guess they're kind of relevant though, because one of them is petrol powered and is said to have taken its inspiration from some of the manufacturing techniques used in the custom motorcycle world. So you'll see some of the hardware, some of the interior, things like the mirrors are a bit more rugged maybe and handmade looking, and that's intentional to reference that chapter, let's say, in Deus's history. The other one, an electric mini, takes its inspiration more so from surfing, with things like a fiberglass spoiler and on the inside neoprene bucket seats. Super cool in my opinion, although I might be a bit biased towards minis, but hopefully more bikes from Deus soon. Anyway, as always, I'd love to know what you think of this week's story, so do let me know down in the comments below. And if you missed our recent review of the brilliant BMW R1300RS Sports Tourer, then I'll put it on the screen now so you can catch up and give that one a watch. Do hit subscribe for more of the latest motorcycle news and reviews right here on MOTOBOB. A massive thanks for watching today, and we'll see you in the next video.